Hey guys, this is Chris the Bass Guy, and I just got back from the 13th annual Portland Retro Game Expo. It was a lot of fun. I got to hang out with a lot of people from the Cartridge Club and meet some new people. I thought I'd just go over my pickups from the event. So usually when I go to video game conventions, my number one objective is to get any NES games that I'm currently missing. I'm kind of wavering on going for a full set just because it gets kind of expensive towards the end, but I have close to 400 now, so let's start off with the NES. So the first game was Arkista's Ring, which is published and developed by American Sammy. So Arkista's Ring is an action-adventure game, it's kind of like in the same vein as The Legend of Zelda, except you play as an elfin girl named Christine who's trying to get the elfin ring of Arkista back from the villainous Shogun. So this game had been on my wish list for a while, and I was actually in a panel towards the end of PRGE, and I wanted to thank It's Rocket Sauce for picking this one up for a good deal. Well, thanks again, Ryan. So the second game that I got was Adventures of Lolo 2. So Adventures of Lolo 2 is a sequel to Adventures of Lolo. Adventures of Lolo 2 is developed by HAL. And the Adventures of Lolo 2, you control the hero Lolo, and he's on a mission to save the princess from evil demons that have kidnapped her, and you have to make your way through mazes. So Adventures of Lolo 2, it's like the original Adventures of Lolo. You actually have an ability where you can actually trap enemies in like a ball. You can actually, so after you pick up a heart, it gives you a little bit one shot that you can use to trap an enemy and move them around out of your way, so you can sort of traverse through the level and pick up hearts. And if after you pick up enough hearts, you open the treasure box, which eventually opens up the door at the top of the stage. So I want to say there are about 50 stages, but I might be wrong. So the next game is Cyberball by Jalico. And this game is basically American football with robots. So in the game, the robots are after a ball which fluctuates in temperatures, so I believe if they hold on to it too long, it starts to get critical and can explode. And then eventually destroying your robot, you have to spend money to get another robot. And it's basically just like any other football game. You can intercept the ball, you go back and forth on offense or defense, special teams, and again, whoever scores the most amount of points wins a game. It's okay, it's all right. I'm not a big sports game guy, but it seems okay. So the next game's kind of cool. It's developed by Rare, but it was published by Nintendo, and that game is Cobra Triangle. Cobra Triangle is interesting because it uses the RC Pro-Am engine, so it's that same sort of top-down isometric view that RC Pro-Am uses. And in this game you have different missions, like where you actually will you'll just race to the end of the stage while trying to beat other opposing boats there, or you can fire at them and you get different power-ups, while another one might be to take mines from one end of the stage to the other. So there's some variety to it. It's pretty fun. Alright, so the next game was developed and published by Ocean, and that game is Darkman. Now, I didn't particularly like this game when I popped it in to try it out. It seems really slippery, and it's really easy to get knocked off the edge of a stage by an enemy. But maybe if I learn the mechanics and get used to it, it might be more fun. I'll come back to it eventually. The next game is by a developer I really like, Capcom, and that game is Destiny of an Emperor. Destiny of an Emperor is a strategy role-playing game. So it's based on the Hiroshi Miyama manga, and it follows the story of the Chinese historical figure Liu Bei and his sworn brothers Shang Fei and Guan Yu. So the story is loosely based upon the events of the 14th century historical novel Romance of the Three Kingdoms. I only played a little bit of it, so I'll have to come back to it. I'm trying to collect more of the obscure RPGs for the NES, so that was another one I wanted to add to the list. So the next game was actually, I really only bought this because it was a good deal. It's not a game that I don't see it as a game I'll ever play or even play with my nephews, because I think they're actually getting too old for this game. And the game's called Fisher-Price Perfect Fit, and it's by Game Tech. So I think in Fisher-Price Perfect Fit sets you're trying to teach picture recognition, spatial relationships, trying to fit a circle block into a circular hole. So all you're doing is matching the picture with the outline in the game. So it's pretty simple, as you'd imagine. So it's for ages 3 to 8. As you'd imagine, it's a pretty easy game. So the next game I bought from Pat the NES Punk. It's another Jalico game. It's an uncommon game. It's a sports game. It's called Goal 2. And I'm terrible at sports games. But I picked this up because it's uncommon, and I'm trying to get... I think I might actually go for a Jalico set, but we'll see. I think I have a big chunk of them right now. So, but anyway, the Goal 2 is... I thought it was kind of clunky the way the game played. I thought the game play was kind of clunky, and I really don't like sport. I'm not a huge fan of sports games because I don't play them much. I don't have a lot of experience, and I thought the computer is incredibly unfair. It's a good looking It's a good looking NES game. There's some great cutscenes, like after somebody scores, they'll show a guy run to the sideline and then just streak down the field after he scores, which I thought was kind of neat. But the computer usually my experience whenever you play against the computer opponent in a sports game versus game is that it always feels very unfair. So that was sort of my experience. I played it for about 15 minutes and I was done. So I don't know if I'll come back to this, but it's good to have in the collection. So the next game is developed by Imagineering and published by Parker Brothers. And that game is Heavy Shreddin', the snowboarding video game. So in Heavy Shreddin', there are different events. I believe there's a half pipe, a slalom course. You can do different tricks in the game. Again, I like these games, but I suck at them. But it's a game I remember my friends either renting. I think either one of my neighbors rented it or had it, and I do remember playing it. It's fun, but I feel like it would take a while for me to get good at it and to learn all the tricks and moves and stuff. But it's another game that it's another game I just wanted in my collection. So the next game is published by Hudson Soft and developed by Now Production Company, and that game is Jackie Chan's Action Kung Fu. So in this game, Jackie Chan's trying to save his twin sister Josephine, who from the evil sorcerer. So it's a fun side-scrolling. Fighting game. So you just run left to right, jumping on different platforms while avoiding enemies, and eventually each stage, I believe there are 5, culminates in a boss fight. And Jackie eventually acquires different fighting techniques that she can use throughout the game. It's really fun. I believe I kind of bought this because of Game Dave, who's obsessed with Jackie Chan, and I've always heard good things about this. I may eventually get the TurboGrafx version, but that one's a lot more money. It's more colorful, and I like how all the sprites and all those TurboGrafx games look, so I might get that eventually. So the next game that I picked up was published and developed by Ocean Software, and that game is Jurassic Park. So in Jurassic Park, you play as Alan Grant, and you have to pick up a certain amount of eggs and get access cards to get into different parts of the level to eventually save different characters from the movie. I haven't played it a lot, and I was actually having trouble in my playthrough because I didn't know what to do. I think I'd have to get an FAQ to actually get through that game because I'm not completely sure. It seemed a little obtuse to me. And the next NES game is another Capcom game, and that's Disney's The Little Mermaid. This game is actually, from what I understand, pretty fun. I've played a little bit of this before. So in The Little Mermaid, you play as Ariel, and you're trying to save the underwater kingdom from the evil Ursula. So Ariel can trap enemies in bubbles, and she can also throw shells. And I believe she can actually get different power-ups and abilities throughout the game. I just haven't gotten that far. And then there are different treasure chests that you can unlock and different abilities you can get. I think it's a fairly short game, as I recall. So I'll have to look into it some more eventually. So I think it'd be a fun game to try to complete. So I'll probably get to it eventually. So the next game is another game that was published by Parker Brothers, but it was developed by Sculptured Software, and that game is Monopoly, which is a game that I have on the, I believe I have it on the SNES, but not the NES. So I thought I'd remedy that, and it was only $3, so I figured what the heck. Monopoly on the NES is definitely a game that you want to play around with your friends or with other people and pass the control around. When I played against the computer, they were very aggressive. They moved too fast. You barely had any sense of what was going on. So I definitely recommend, if you're going to play Monopoly on the NES, play with your friends. Don't play against the computer. It's just no fun. And some people might say Monopoly's no fun anyway. It's a very divisive game. But anyway. So the next game is a Tecmo game. And that game is Solomon's Key. And I picked this up mainly because I bought Fire and Ice, and which is the second game in the series, and I did not and I completely forgot that I did not have Solomon's Key. They're both similar games, and Solomon's Key is similar to Fire and Ice, but it's not quite the same. In Solomon's Key, you're just trying to work your way up to the key while trying to avoid enemies, where in Fire and Ice, you're trying to move ice blocks around to put out all the flames in the level, whereas in Solomon's Key, you're just trying to get the key to get out of each level. So in Solomon's Key, you're working against a time limit. There are enemies in the way, so you may have to destroy them by dropping blocks on them. So in Solomon's Key, use a magic wand to create blocks, which can be used to squash enemies or climb to traverse the level, up or down the level, while working against a time limit to get the key in the level, and then make it to the exit. So it gets progressively more difficult as you go along. It's fun. I do like puzzle platformers. I'll probably come back to this eventually. So this next game is another American Sammy published and developed game, and that game is Michael Andretti's World GP. It's a very technical driving game. So you actually have a lot of sharp hairpin turns that you have to upshift, downshift. So it's a very technical driving game, so you actually have to slow the car down by downshifting, and then when you get to straightaway, you have to upshift to speed up. And I believe your tires do eventually wear down, so you have to make at least one pit stop if you want to win the race. I thought it was pretty difficult. I don't know that I would come back to this. It's okay. It looks pretty good, but I don't really think I'd come back to it. I didn't think it was a super fun racing game. And then at the convention, I picked up a couple of Tengen games. The first one is Tubin, So of course the Tengen games were unlicensed, and so all the Tengen games were of course published and developed by Atari. So in Tubin you play as Biff and Jeff, and you just basically ride a tube down a river, so it's vertically scrolling, and you have to avoid different things that might pop your tube, like branches. I believe there are hunters for some reason that are hunting, and then there are alligators, and just all sorts of wacky, sort of weird obstacles you have to avoid. It's pretty fun. You have a time limit. You have to go through gates. So in Tubin, if you somehow beat the game, I remember I read somewhere it says there's a kickin' party at the end of this. At the end, if you succeed, which I thought was pretty funny. So this is the last NES game so this is the second Tengen game that I bought, and the last NES game that I bought, and that game is Vindicators. And Vindicators is a top-down run-and-gun tank game, so you use left and right to steer, and then after you steer, that you can only go in that direction that you're facing. So by going up or down, by pressing up or down, they're kind of weird controls. It's okay. I don't know if I would really come back to play this a bunch. So the next game I picked up was Mega Man 64, which is also known as Mega Man Legends on the PlayStation. So Mega Man 64, Mega Man Legends, it plays a lot differently than any of the other Mega Man games because of course it's 3D. And it's an action-adventure type of game, and it has some different elements like lock-on targeting and stuff. So I've only played a little bit of Mega Man 64, and I was just in the ruins, sort of messing around, and so I'd have to go back and play this. I think the game is much maligned, but I'd like to sort of see it for myself, I guess. So the next game is for the Game Gear. It's a JRPG, and that game is Defenders of Oasis. So in Defenders of Oasis, you play as a prince who is the descendant of a king who rid the land of an evil spirit. And so Defenders of Oasis is basically a JRPG that's based in an Arabic sort of desert land, where you play as a prince who is the descendant of a king who once rid the land of an evil spirit that's of course descended upon the land once again. So the prince has been called upon by the king to fight this evil spirit, and you pick up different characters along the way. It's a turn-based RPG. I remember having this back in the day and having a lot of fun with it, so I was glad to get it back. In my collection. So PRGE, I was trying to get some of the really well-known Sega Genesis role-playing games, especially the Phantasy Star games, and some of the Shining games. So the first game that I bought for the Sega Genesis was Phantasy Star 3. So in Phantasy Star 3, you actually play as a young prince named Rice, who decides to marry a woman, Maya, who gets kidnapped at the beginning of the game. But Rice, of course, wants to go figure out who kidnapped her and goes after her. So in Phantasy Star, it's very similar to the second game, I believe. So it's top-down, turn-based RPG, basically like a sci-fi JRPG. I really like these games. I just haven't been able to really sink my teeth into them. I'd like to first start with I still need to finish the first Phantasy Star game before I start moving through the second and the third and the fourth. So the next game was Phantasy Star 4. So the funny thing about Phantasy Star is I actually bought this off a friend of the Cartridge Club, Cody, his wife, Cody, and his wife had actually bought a double because they had the same game list, I guess, and then they were both hunting for the same games. So, and they both ran across Phantasy Star 4, but I guess they didn't have good cell phone service, so they were trying to match. So his wife Melinda was trying to message him that she found it. I guess she didn't get a response, so she just went ahead and bought it. And then I went outside and got to the table, and then she realized that they just bought the same game. And it happened to be, so it was good that they grabbed it, because it held it, so they essentially held it for me, which is nice. And so I was able to buy it off of Melinda. So I think it all worked out. So I've always heard good things about Phantasy Star 4. It's supposed to be it's a really late release Sega Genesis game. It's really pretty. It's very advanced because they had 24 megs to work with, which is really a huge game which is a huge ROM file to have on a cart for the time. Phantasy Star 4 is the last Phantasy Star that was on the Sega Genesis, and it has some cool big sprites, and you even have some combat vehicles. And so Phantasy Star 4 has a lot of magic spells, a ton of cool looking monsters. There's even some combat vehicles, and the only thing I don't like about Phantasy Star is Sega started cheaping out, and so I don't really like these cardboard boxes. I don't really like cardboard boxes for Genesis games, but I'm glad just to have the game. It's supposed to be a really tour de force, I think, especially as these sort of mid-90s RPGs go. So the next game that I bought is another Sega Genesis JRPG, and it's called Shining in the Darkness. I only played a little bit of it, and it's definitely another. It has really cool artwork. I really like the aesthetic of it. Looks like a lot of dungeon crawling. So the towns in Shining in the Darkness are kind of interesting because it's one panoramic image that you scan across, and then you stop at each building. So it's one static image that you just sort of scan across, and so you'll scan across, and then you'll stop it. You might stop like the tavern or the shop, and then go to your action, screen, hit enter, and enter the building, and then you can go in and talk to sort of tavern patrons, or if you go to a shop, you'll enter and you can talk to the merchant, buy and sell items. So I think it's kind of an interesting game. I'll have to hopefully get to it sooner rather than later. So the next game is another Sega Genesis game, and that's The Revenge of Shinobi. So I bought the Sega Classic version, which is a little cheaper, but it does have the manual, so I was happy about that. It's basically like all the other Shinobi. You play as a ninja. You attack with shurikens and a sword. You fight off baddies. So I really like the Shinobi because of the special moves that you can pull off. It's the big sprites, the big colorful sprites. The animations are all really nice. And I'm just sort of a sucker for any of the ninja game. The last Sega Genesis game that I picked up was Shinobi 3: Return of the Ninja Master. So this game does not have the manual. I just wanted the game, and I asked Eric, MightyQDawg, what he thought of the game, if it was any good, and of course he said it was fantastic, so I picked it up. So Shinobi 3 is a little different. I believe they added some different special moves. You can traverse up walls, and of course all the Shinobi games have great soundtracks. So it's another game that I'll have to come back to. They're all tough, but they're all really fun. So the last two games are Sega Master System games, one of which was in MightyQDawg's top 10 recommended Sega Master System games that you need for your collection. I'll put a link to that below the video. So the first game, Sega Master System game that I bought was Altered Beast, which I wanted it just to to bulk up my Sega Master System collection. I think the game overall is kind of cheap. Game, especially on the Sega Master System, I think it's overtaxing the processor a little bit, so it flickers a lot, and then so you think you've registered an attack and it doesn't land, and then by so Altered Beast for the Sega Master System, I think it's pretty unfair because the game flickers a lot because I believe it's overtaxing the system. So throw a punch and you miss, then you're kind of out of luck because then you're swarmed by a bunch of enemies and then you have no chance to recover until you die, and then I think you're temporary invincibility. So I think the game's not very good for the Sega Master System. I think you're better off just sticking to the Genesis version. So the next game and the last game for my pickup video is Penguin Land for the Sega Master System. Now this was a MightyQDawg recommendation, and in this game you play as a penguin, and you're trying to push an egg down. You're trying to push this penguin's egg down the stage while avoiding different enemies, and while trying not to push the egg off of too high of a platform. I think if you push the egg off of a ledge and it falls more than 3 spaces, it breaks, and you only get 3 eggs per playthrough. So you play as Overbite. So your penguin's name is Overbite, and you're a commander of a special penguin task force. And your mission is to bring fragile eggs back safely home from a foreign land. And your journey will take you deep into mysterious caverns where dangerous animals await to attack and destroy your eggs. I believe you're trying to get eggs back to this spaceship, which is kind of odd. I almost forgot, I picked up some manuals from John Riggs' booth. So I got these, I believe, for $1 each. So I picked up some NES manuals. So I picked up Double Dragon 2, Kirby's Adventure, Bugs Bunny's Birthday Blowout, Marble Madness, Ninja Gaiden 2, The Dark Sword of Chaos, Arkanoid, the 3D Battles of World Runner, let's see, Mach Rider, Dino Wars, let's see, Duck Hunt Super Mario Brothers. Let's see, and then the last NES manual is Milon's Secret Castle. And then I picked up one SNES manual, and that was Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. And I wanted this one because I had it back in the day. So there's all my pickups for Portland Retro Gaming Expo. Let me know what you thought of those games in the comments below. I'll probably do another one of these for the next convention I go to, but I'm still trying to figure out what sort of content I want to create. I do have some mods that I need to do to some portable systems, so I'm still trying to decide what type of content I want to do. But there are some mod projects I may film. There are still some flea markets and things I may go to and check out. I'm not too far from East Starland, and then I know there's some, and MagFest isn't too far away. So, but again, let me know what you guys think. I'm still trying to feel out what I want to do with my channel, and because I also want to juggle the sort of games of the month and the CCABC and some other things in the Cartridge Club. I may write some blogs, but anyway, let me know what you guys thought, and I'll catch you guys later.